Welcome to the first edition of Top Lines and Tales in the year 2025, and I'd like to wish you all a belated Happy New Year and welcome you all back to listening to a few more podcasts there. I know we've had a bit of a delay, but we've got some fantastic guests lined up for you during the spring months here there, and an excellent guest we have on the podcast today. And of course, as always, I'd like to thank Harbro for their continued support with the Top Lines and Tales podcast. This week on Top Lines and Tales, we're going to go to Orkney, to Sandwick near Stromness in Orkney on the mainland there to speak to Colin Davidson. Colin, welcome to Top Lines and Tales.
Welcome, Andy.
And I say you're there on Orkney. You do a little bit of geography for those that listen overseas there. Orkney right up in the north end, the islands off the north of Scotland there. And there's a few islands there, but you're on what they call the main island, which is probably the biggest one. Is that right?
Yeah, we're on the mainland here, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're near Skaill, so again, a history lesson to those people that listen to this podcast.
Well, just about 300 yards from the village, Skaill village, so we see plenty of folk here about.
You'll get a lot of tourists there. Skaill goes back, I think, maybe 5,000 years. I think that's a historic village, one of the earliest settlements of Neolithic man.
Yeah, there's a heap of folk there, and the cruise liners are in now. It's nearly 200 of them this year, so that gives us plenty of folk.
Good Lord, it does. Do you take a bit of money off them, Colin?
No, really, no. They just wear the island out.
I just go through the farm there. I said that the farm is Skaill Farm, and you're significant with Angus, which we're going to have a chat about in a minute. But just tell me a little bit about what the land is like there at Skaill. You're down near the sea, I think.
Yeah, we're down there. Only the stadium's only about 50 feet above sea level, and one side of the farm sort of sandy land, and the other side's clay loam sort of land, and it's all pretty well drained.
And all at low land as well.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's all pretty well drained, and it's handy for that up here when we get so much rain.
Good. And mainly down to livestock, Colin?
Yeah, it's all livestock. We carry cows and breeding cows and breeding ewes and a bit of barley for feeding. It's all used at home.
Okay. I've been on Orkney a couple of times, and I'm always astounded by the high quality of cattle on Orkney. And I remember one of your neighbours telling me, I can't remember who it was now, saying that, the money it costs to take the animals back to Aberdeenshire or back to mainland Scotland to kill them, it's cost as much to take a good one as a bad one, so you might as well have a good one.
Well, there's not much dairy influence in the beef side of the job here, really. It would probably help it as well.
Yeah. Okay. And let's go on to the Angus then. The Skaill herd of Angus, as I said, has been significant for a lot. You tell me how long. When did you first get started with the Angus there?
I think it was 1974 that I started, and we were all commercial up to then. But it was all Angus and Shorthorn cross cows, and started the pedigree then and went from there.
And you'd be working with your father as well on that at that time. You'd be a young man back then.
Yeah, my father and my uncle. And grew up with the cattle of the 60s and started with a challenge there, maybe.
Yeah, you could say you're back in the 70s. You wouldn't find many big Angus, but I think your break would be when you look towards Canada, I think, to improve the breed.
Yeah. Well, I bought 2 or 3 of the natives, and about 6 generations of the biggest bulls you could use, and they never shifted. Some seemed to move and others didn't. So,
Tricky times buying big bulls trying to improve small cattle, wasn't it? Hit and miss.
Yeah. It was a tough job to get the thing shifting at all.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Angus said it would be on the bottom, but there'd be 1 or 2 people that would be pioneers in the breed, getting it back up going again. And one of those would be Tom Brewis, and I think you had a few dealings with Tom, didn't you?
Yeah, Tom and Neil and Willie Roberts and people like that. It was a challenge, and they stuck with it.
They saw the future and stuck with the breed, and thank God they did. To be fair, because it was in a bad way. And just let's going to talk about the cow that probably put you going. You might just go back a bit before this, but the cow that I would say everybody would say would be the making of the Skaill herd. There would be Nick Stelia 48X.
He was the breakthrough. I was lucky to get her, and she really moved the job on for us, and we never looked back since then.
And just talk us through how she came, because I think Tom had got an import coming in, and being the gentleman that he was, I think he let you have the pick of them. Is that right?
Well, it was a Willibur cow we did from Tom Brewis, and then George Cormack took in some, and there was a line of breeding I was wanting, and that was sort of the SO going back to R&J at the time. And that was my preferred one. And at the time, Lone Star was a big name, and I preferred that line. And George got one for me. And when I saw them coming off the plane, I was very, very happy with her. And she's bred very well as well. So.
She's a legend within the breed. And had you been over to Canada already, or how had you studied
No,
this?
I hadn't. I'd been working in Australia and had some cash, and that's what I spent it on.
Working in Australia, okay. What were you doing there now?
I was working on building sites and bridges, and I did a couple of months on farms in the seeding time. I looked after cattle at the Perth show for a week. And
okay.
Yeah.
And so you came back and seen the writing on the wall, needed some Canadian cattle, and just and did you research?
Yeah, well, I had been trying to get size into them for a while, but as I say, with the natives, it was there was no milk, no size, no growth, and plenty of fat.
True. And Delia would be a game changer for you. As I said, what like a cow was she at the time? Was she like a lot bigger than what you'd got there, or just?
Yeah, she was a monster. But she had widths. A lot of the cattle that were coming in were big but narrow, and she had the widths, and that's what carried her through, I think. And that set me off with a bit of width in the cattle from the beginning.
Okay, I needed to get bigger, but then I suppose embryo transfer would be coming into its own back then, and I think you took advantage of that, didn't you? With her?
I took advantage of that to multiply the female side of the thing, and it worked out well for me. Yeah.
2 or 3 years worth of flushing there, got to set yourself a herd up, and then you sold her on. Yeah,
we sold her on to Ray Grieve and Alistair Cormack, and then I think they maybe won the Highland with her then, I think. So.
She was female champion in 1994, because I looked it up this morning there, so there we
go. Yeah.
And of course, to a good home as well. Alistair would be a tremendous man to bring the cattle out to. But would I be right? Just about everything D in your herd goes back to that cow?
Yes, that would be right, yeah.
Okay. And is that most of the herd today? What cows are you running today?
It would be, most of them's that. There was the Estella line, which went back to a cow for Tangier, a Canadian cow, South Home kind of bred cow, who was actually a breed record at the time. Then John Graham sold her in Stirling. Alec Ogg bought her, and then I got her at the second special from there as an old cow.
Okay. What would she be in as a breed record as a young when Ogg bought her?
It was like 2-2 or something like that.
But we're going back a long way there. And, but as I said, it went to a good herd with Alistair, with Ray Grieve at Carl earlier there, went on and won, and she was a good show cow, not just that one. I think she won quite a fair bit, didn't she?
Yeah.
And just moving on to some of her daughters, then you broke the record yourself. Probably moving on a wee bit now with Skaill Delia, and tell us a bit about her.
Yeah, she was X16 she was, and I took her to the Black Beauty and won there, and I thought I would take her down to Stirling there, and she won there, and he made a record price there, and that was was that about 2000, I think, and no, I'll tell you what it was. It was BSE. That's
yeah.
And that ruled out some good buyers for Southern Ireland at the time, but we got on all right.
Well, I heard a whisper. You might have told it me yourself. To be fair, that you turned down 10,000 for her at the beauty the Black Beauty
in Aberdeen. Yeah, and then the guy that offered that went bust before I got to February. So
just as well you didn't sell it to him. And she went to Bill Bruce, of course, at Logie, and she'd be in good hands there, of course, with Andrew Reid, so, and went on to be a show cow as well.
Yeah, she did. Yeah,
no, great. And was she a direct daughter of Nick Delia? Yeah. Yeah, people were wanting that breeding, but you'd have that many of them. I suppose you could afford to sell a couple.
Yeah, and that was it. And you needed to get it out and be seen, and you had to let go a good one now and again.
Sure. And then let's talk about Skaill.com. Is that the next generation in that one, or is that still the same?
No, that would be, I think, .com was a grandson of Delia, I think.
Okay.
Out a Lone Star daughter.
Okay. So you used a fair bit of a Lone Star there, and Lone Star was he was a big boy, wasn't he? Even to this day, he'd still be a big lad, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And did you get quite a bit of semen in from him from was he Canada? Yes, he was Canada, wasn't
he? No, he I sold him at the Highland Show. I got 16,000 for .com at the Highland Show.
Aye, right, 16,000. Yeah, that's the one that I was saying. But the Lone Star I was talking about, Lone Star would have been.
Yeah.
Okay, and 16,000. Yeah, a good trade, and then Edinburgh of the Moss is another bull that you'd have used to in the early doors.
Yeah, he was a bit different. He was more to the performance side of the American cattle, Scotch Cap and Evergreen family.
Okay,
that was kind of the beginning of the figure kind of job then.
Sure, and an important milestone, of course, and John Moores there would have had pretty much all Canadian cattle, wouldn't he, there at the Moss at the time?
Yeah, and John sold them to me then, and he did well with me, but I lost him a black leg after a year or so it wasn't so handy then.
No. And another bull would have influenced you maybe a little bit later. You mentioned Willie Robertson at Nightingale, and I think you followed him quite closely. And is it Proud Jake that you bought? Yeah,
I bought Proud Jake, and he did exceptionally well for me for a couple of years, and I made quite a bit of money out of him. And then he stifled himself and was very, very disappointed at the time, but on reflection, I had enough by then, I think. Issues start to appear that, fertility. Every year I scanned the cows, there was more of them, not in calf, and there was maybe a bit of temperament and a bit of colour about. So
Okay. But you did have, I think his first three sons, were they gross 35,000 or something?
Yeah, I had a great day in Stirling with them. Yeah.
No. Excellent. And as I said, that by that time you're starting to bring a bit of money back into the job, Colin. It's not easy to making money at that job in the early days.
Yeah, it was doing really well for me, and you were you're selling cattle from home quite easily then.
Yeah. And let's talk about Anconian Elixir for a minute, because he's a bull that turns up. As you know, I've been involved in the history of the breed a little bit, and Anconian Elixir turns up everywhere. But I think, did you not take a punt on him just by seeing a photograph? Am I right in saying?
Yeah, well, I followed American cattle of the time, and he was doing well, and you couldn't get many American cattle in here because of the health regulations. So that's what .com was by Elixir.
Okay.
And I bought semen from
the Porters down in the south there. But a bull went on and to leave more than 1,000 calves, I think, in amongst the breed, didn't he? And he was a turning point for the Angus breed, would you say?
Yeah, and he hadn't been used very much, and it was only really when that .com came in that folks seen what he was doing, and he was used a lot after that.
Yeah. And did you get yourself out to Canada, out to America back then? You said you're studying it. Did you get yourself a trip across and have a look?
I've never made it. I've talked about it plenty, but I've never made it really. We'll maybe make it next year.
There you go. I'm going next week to Denver to the show there, but it's quite different. The way some of those guys bring the cattle and that out there over there, but they had. The Canadians and the Americans would have had different cattle back then to each other?
Yes. Well, the Canadians, the Americans were buying Canadian cattle for size at that point. And then, they went same as here, and they've gone smaller now again.
We'll talk about them going smaller a bit to America, because I think that's probably something that we're seeing starting to creep into the UK as well. But let's just go back to those bulls there. Neil Massey I had on a podcast, and he said Blealac Blackstock was probably one of the best bulls he'd ever bred. And I think you got a bit of him, didn't you?
I got a half share in him. And I was lucky I got Neil on a good day that day, I think.
And he was by Abraham Dean decision, I think.
Neil had another Blackstock that day, a year younger, and he offered me all of him for the same price, and I said I would sooner have the half of the other one for the same price.
So he was an older bull, was he?
Yes.
Okay. Did well for Neil and did well for you as well, by the sound of it.
Yeah.
And would he a female breeder? Would he be a female breeder?
He left a lot of tremendous cows, and he was coming out with bulls as well at the same time. Yeah.
It's a rare bull that does both jobs, though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And we'll move on to a little bit of yourself. Then you went on to got involved in the society, and you were honoured to be president of the society. Am I right? In 2007, I think.
Yeah. And I've served on council quite a few times. Neil Massey's probably served more than me, but would be done it as much as most, probably. Enjoyed most of it, but.
You'd have gone in a wee bit of troubled times around about then, maybe 2007?
Well, I think this last decade, I wouldn't be so happy with the society. I have so much. There's no fun in the business like it used to be. Yeah. Better not to get political, though.
No, let's not go there for sure. Let's not go there. And I seem to remember, because I chatted to you a while ago and I was doing some research for a different book, and that got you across into Eastern Europe, and that became a bit of a jaunt for you, rather. You went over there. Was it Romania you went to start with? Yeah,
we were in Germany, Romania. We went to the Paris show, and some went to Poland, and we got 60 cattle sold out to Romania. And then Blue Tongue came, I think it was.
Okay.
And we're just getting underway, and it was interesting, and it was interesting to see Romania. We were taking 300 kilometres out into the country, and it was tremendous countryside. But
and good cattle. I spoke to William McLaren about this, and he said they got some tremendous Angus in Romania. But you've been there judging a couple of times as well, I think, have you?
No, I was just out twice at the show out there, and we were visiting. Well, it was just the first of them. There was maybe quite a lot went for Weatherly in that first show that went.
Okay.
But an eye opener, and we judged in the Czech Republic, and the two countries were very different.
Are they? Okay.
Czech Republic was very just like Western Europe type of thing. They were very up to speed, I would have said.
They were up to speed.
Yeah.
And Hungary as well, I think, was another one for you.
Yeah, that was maybe before my time.
Was it?
John Moore did more stuff out there, I think.
Okay. Yeah. But certainly populated that Europe side. And I was at William McLaren sale in I think you were there as well, actually, in earlier on, back end of last year, and he got buyers coming from all those countries. They're still buying semen, trying to get in there. It's big business in those eastern blocks now, isn't it? Yeah,
and it's just we've been unfortunate. Blue Tongue seems to come along, or foot and mouth, or something when your thing's just getting going, and it's spoiled it a few times.
Would you get a bit more of a select status by being on Orkney compared to anywhere else? Could you isolate it a little bit better to get animals for export when other people couldn't go?
Well, you do that, but you're classed in with a lot, and maybe we're handier for getting health statuses and things like that. But you have to play with an overall ruling, and that's it. And it's very challenging to come to Stirling and be competitive, coming for the distance. It is a challenge, but you don't have a choice, so you get round it.
And you ship your cattle down when you take most of Stirling. Do you just bring them down and go to the sale, or do you ship them over a little bit earlier and get them looked after?
I've always taken them down in Ivor Williams' trailer. This last sale, I put them off 2 weeks before, and but it was a bigger number. But
we'll talk about that sale in a second there. And just going back, you judged Perth. I'm going to say 2002. Would I be right? 2000.
Yeah, that would be right, probably. Yeah,
23 years ago, Colin.
Yeah, don't remind me.
And that would be the time maybe when the cattle were starting to get a bit bigger and a bit harder. Some of those northern cattle.
Yeah, they were starting to improve with the size a wee bit then. But it was still a long way to go. It was.
Yeah. And then you judged the Royal, I think, and the Highland at various times, and a lot more shows besides, I guess.
And judge some of the other breeds in Stirling as well. But
Uh-huh. And do you branch into other breeds at home? Was you just stick with the Angus there? Have you had any other pure breeds?
I tried some Charlies, but I didn't have enough of them to buy a bull, and you would think they were half gone in calf and then they would bull, and it was just, if you weren't doing it right, I got rid of them then.
Okay.
We were short of facilities here, and most of our cows are out wintered, and they didn't do with that either, so...
Sure, okay. Outwintered on there. We were talking just before we went on air here about the weather here in Scotland at the moment. I'm in Fife, and it's minus ever so much, and they've been down to minus 18 and 20 round about the place. But you said you don't really get a lot of frost where you are up there on that coast.
Near the sea, too near.
Yeah.
You might say my management wasn't good enough for the Charlies. I don't know.
But you say you winter the cattle out, and what numbers of cattle do you run altogether that you're wintering out now?
We've about 220 cows to calf. That's 25 or something this year, I think.
Okay, and how many of those are pure Angus?
There'll be 100 of them pure.
Right, okay. Well, that'll explain, will bring me on to the next thing then, was that you had a reduction sale in Stirling this last back end there. And they were an absolute picture, I must admit. They were a credit to you.
Yeah, it went really well. It was fine to get the wind on your back for a change. And there was a sort of the first of my change in genetics, and I thought I'd better see if there was a demand for them, and I was quite surprised. I thought maybe it was just early enough, but the timing seemed to be right.
You certainly look surprised when I'd seen you just after you came out of the sale ring there, but no, a tremendous sale. Average, 6,300 or something for yes. Was it for 30 cattle and sold them all? Never
no, it was 18. I intended 18. To come with 20, but I thought, well, we cut it down a wee bit and made sure that we weren't coming with anything that was too low a standard kind of thing.
Okay,
and push my luck too much on the first run. So,
and the top price of 10,000 was another Diana, but still going back to that original next dealer there, and that went to the Tilsons at Wedderley, and that kind of their type of cattle, I would say, just a little bit easier flesh, and everybody said the same thing. And there was another couple of sales on the same day as well. I went there, but which were much bigger and harder cattle, and your cattle. They look different to the rest of them, but they seem to be what everybody's starting to want now, Colin.
Yeah, well, I began to think I spent my whole life making them bigger and bigger, and I was finding it was making the job harder and harder. And if you're getting 10 grand for a bull, it didn't really matter. But if you start to look at the figures, calving percentage, scannings, it was just gradually getting worse and worse. And no matter how hard you tried, you couldn't beat it. Mm-hmm. I just made the decision to change the genetics and go for easy calving. And you can identify easy calvers that still have high growth. So that's what I'm trying to do, and feed efficiency, that kind of thing.
And we do get we chat some pioneers on this podcast over there, but it's certainly, as you said, a big change here. And what bulls did he use? What did he use to start to see that? When did you make that? Start thinking about that change to bring a bit easier flesh?
It's quite funny because when I started, the show ring cattle were they were way off piste for what the commercial producers were wanting. And I think you could ask the same question now. Is the show cattle too far off piste for what the commercial men are needing now? Because you can't get people to work with cattle. People are giving up cows. They're not necessarily wanting to give them up, but they're looking at their figures and their performance, and it's not that they're not working hard enough, but it's just physically impossible, I think.
It's an interesting subject you raised there, because, again, we talk to a lot of Americans on this program, and they're saying, yeah, I know Dr. Bob, he listens to this program that we wrote the book with together, and Bob says, well, the show ring is the kiss of death to the commercial man over there, totally different type of beast. And that's a little bit, as you said, off-piste. It seems a bit strange that doesn't come back round. Is that down to the judges, or just down because bigger is better? Or why are we not seeing the more commercial end of the cattle in the show ring? I suppose that's an open question.
Well, I guess it's just fashions go too far often, and we've selected for bone and growth and nothing else. That's probably it. But the one thing I've noticed, well, the last 20 years, all the visitors, whatever country they came from, the one thing that was consistent, they said that cattle will put you out of business. And I didn't really believe it at the time, but my thinking on that has changed radically.
And
That's why I made the change.
And what bulls did you use to make that change? But there are a few breeders in the country, as I said, probably gone down that same route as yourself, a smaller cow.
I took some of the sort of they call them the dumpies from America. They're fallen by the wayside, and I took some gardeners, which would probably, well, they're recognised as having the best carcass cattle in the world, the marbling, muscle, and moderate size. And then I took Virgos, who have bigger cattle and more like the cattle here, possibly, but not so hard calving by a mile.
Okay, and that brought the physical size of them down. What about the weight, Colin? You're bringing it to slightly. Well, I wouldn't say your heifers were small in Stirling by any means, but I mean they would still shorter leg, but still carry that weight. These flesh cattle.
Well, I was just weighing bulls just a couple of days ago for the trial, and they're 20 kilos heavier than last year and the years before, and that's all the new genetics.
Okay, so you're still getting the weight to them.
Is getting the weight so far in you, and the idea is to get early growth and then not such a high mature weight.
Yeah, that makes sense. And let's just go back to those figures then. And figures, again, we've written about in the USA how figures brought them back from the brink of a bad place in the USA, and figures came into the UK, but not quite the same because they weren't maybe accurate enough or enough numbers, bigger numbers to go with them. But I mean, when did they start? When did the figures really start meaning something for you?
Well, I started with rated 2100 in Scotch Cap, and that was at the very start of the American figures. And Scotch Cap would be one of the top bulls then, and Traveller. And that the type of cattle that the gardeners kind of moved on to at that point.
And were they very? And those guys would be very focused on the performance as well.
Yeah, it's all recorded. The gardeners will be recorded for as long as anybody, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Virgos are well with feed efficiency, so it was all part of the equation.
That's interesting, the feed efficiency. I know we've had John Elliott on here, and the trials they've done with feed efficiency there, and he said that's been a buzzword in across the Atlantic now, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's really a very interesting, and it's gains you can get without any antagonistic traits coming out of it. So,
and are you measuring for that yourself?
Yes, I have the bins. I had the 4 or 5 years I've had the bins now, and it's getting more and more interesting as we go.
Sure. And a very hereditable trait, again, John tells me.
Yeah, it is. It is heritable as growth rate, and I've actually got the chance of getting a methane measuring machine now as well, but I'm not sure. It's a bit trickier because there's some other antagonistics go with low methane as well, so it's not quite so straightforward.
Interesting. Let's just get on to that subject, because I mean, the day this podcast we're recording now today, they've turned up in the paper. I don't know if you've seen it this morning, that the SRUC have produced a methane, a cloned, I think, a methane. A cow that's going to put out less methane, and obviously there's been some stooshy in the papers with regards to Bill Gates getting, and of course Harborough was sponsored this podcast. Harborough with their Rumitech have been working on that themselves for a number of years there, and a minefield obviously. But you sound like you've done a bit of research. Anything else you can tell me on that front?
Well, I don't know if that's actually been cloned, or is it just an IVF with parentage that is low methane? I'm not sure. You maybe know better than me.
No, you might be right. I only glimpsed the article this morning. That was all. But how's that going to work? How's that going to go?
Well, it seems to be gathering traction with the supermarkets, who at the end of the day will control it, I guess. And
but you say the antagonism. Let's get into the weeds here a little bit with this one. You say the antagonism between the methane and the growth. How does that come?
You can get low methane producers, but they don't eat much and they don't grow much. So it's more of a balancing act, I think.
Okay. I'm going to say a big man farts more, but that's probably not quite politically correct. But So they're taking less feed and therefore they're producing less methane because of that. So,
And it's all tied in with the feed efficiency because it's a lower carbon footprint, and if you can add the methane at the right level, you're gaining again. So
okay. And
to turn that into money is the problem.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the same as the other things that you've done, even turning the feed efficiency into money. Because if it's the same, I know that, again, I spoke to John Elliott about it. He said it was one of the most expensive pieces of equipment he's ever put on the farm. Now, it's not cheap to go down that route when you're not getting anything else back for it. It's a more future investment, isn't it?
But if you compare it to a tractor, hopefully it'll make more money than the tractor makes.
Well, I hope so. I hope so on that, and we'll go on from there. So you're still breeding with 100 cows there, and still looking forward with the rest of it. And you won Beef Innovator of the Year there a few years back there. So what was that about? What were they looking at there that you were innovating? Was that the feed efficiency?
Well, I guess it was the feed efficiency, and I was selling bulls through the feed efficiency to the eye stations, and. It's gone on from there, and it'll all boil down to figures and data at the end of the day, whatever happens. So that's
profit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a son who's interested, but he's not going to stand at the hose and with clippers. But the data will be what it goes forward with, I would imagine.
Okay.
So I thought I'd better make a start.
Yes, indeed. And you say you've put some of those bulls into the AI stations. Is that getting a big take up now?
Yeah,
with the feed efficiency.
I think they're doing well, and the AI stations are running feed efficiency tests on the calves of the bulls to get a feed efficiency rating on them. So,
okay, and this is commercial cows we're talking, not pedigrees.
Yeah. So when they can buy something that's been through the system, it short circuits the job a wee bit.
And what sort of percentage are we seeing efficiency wise? When you say more feed efficient bulls, are we talking 5% more or 10% more or 20, 30%? How does that work against your average bull that's not tested maybe?
Well, the first year I had there was two bulls exactly the same to look at. You wouldn't know which one. They were by half brothers, and the one had feed efficiency in them, and they both had weight gains similar. They had EBV similar. They were similar to look at, but the one ate half as much feed as the other to get there.
That's a lot for a bull as well, isn't it? That's a huge difference.
And I had a few with each sire, and the one sire's calves all came in the top half, and the other sire's came in the bottom half. It was quite fun. Yeah.
So it is very heritable, as you said there. So
yeah.
But brilliant that you're looking at with a futuristic eye, as you said, your son coming into the business, and that's their job to take that further forward again. And your son's a vet, I think, isn't he?
Yeah. He said he wasn't going to cut his own calves out, anyhow, he said so.
Okay. Yeah, I've been drinking with the boy in the Highland show before now. He's a good lad. And just move away from that a little bit. You mentioned the sheep, but for all Angus is where you're at, and that's what this is about. You mentioned the sheep there. What sort of sheep do you run, and what suits to the climate where you are?
We've cleansed, and we run about 300 of them.
Okay.
My wife does most of the sheep work, and we sell a few tups locally and Carlisle and Stirling. I think we're up as high as 2.5 for a tup.
Okay, it's interesting. The Clanes again, a very efficient breed.
Yeah, the Gimmers did very well last year for us at the sale. So we're going for easy care for everything. I think that's the way we're heading.
Yeah, and that's certainly where the Clane's starting to make its mark. And you look at the likes of Neil McGowan and those guys, and John Scott as well, going with the figures on these easier care sheep, and the figures are starting to mean a bit now as well. You get into the measuring that side of it.
Yeah, we're not doing so much with the sheep because you can only spend so much time on it really, and they can't take up a lot of our time if we're trying to do more on that side. Cool. And what we're doing is we're trying to keep size in them as well as getting the easy calving. For I'm not so sure about the grass-fed side of it. It's more of a niche thing. Okay. But the finishing side of cattle in the UK, it's going that way already. It's like the dairies; they're getting bigger and bigger units.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have more buying power and selling power, so you must stay relevant. Something that goes into that system.
Absolutely right. And some of the, you mentioned not many dairy on the Orkney there, but I mean the beef from dairy is starting to come into that now, and I guess some of your bulls will be going into those dairy cows as well with the right figures.
Yeah, and that's just an example of how the beef business, because it's controlled by data and efficiency and money, and that bigger finishers are doing most of that side of it.
Brilliant. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. One thing I wanted to mention as well, thank you very much, is you donated a heifer to Doreen Cormack. We mentioned Alistair Cormack earlier on, of course. Doreen's had a share of health issues, and we all put a wee bit in there. But you donated a heifer to that cause there for her Skaill, so that was a great thing for you to do too.
Well, Doreen got her treatment, but sadly it did not last or improve her vastly. But she wanted to try it, so. That was it. I guess all of us would like to try something when you got something like that. So.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we do still see Doreen about there, and she's still large as life. Is still a great character. Lives just down the road here, actually. And Colin, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've been trying to get you on for a chat for a while there. And I gather you're no longer on the Angus Society, as you said, but you are still going forward, and you'll have another drove of heifers coming back in shortly, I guess.
Yeah, we'll try and come. Well, we're cutting edge genetics we're on now, and I don't want to sell them. What I'm planning is to do it in 2 years' time again.
Okay.
Most of them this year. I am toying with the idea of taking 4 of the best and flushing them so as I have the genetics off them, and maybe taking them down in October.
Okay.
Just to keep the momentum on.
Mm-hmm. And will you have bulls down for Stirling in a few weeks' time?
Well, I'm planning to maybe take 4 heifers and 4 of the American bulls.
Okay.
But I'm hoping that I'll get a sort of a reduction, like a sale, the same as my heifers, out with the show, because I'm taking the line that the show ring's not where we want to be. But we'll have to get permission from the society to do all that things, and the auction mart maybe.
Okay. Well, that's another subject altogether, I think, for a second. But that's and with regards to bulls, I know we've sort of been around this subject, but you said you've tried all the new genetics and you're buying. Do you actually run bulls at home? Are you looking for a bull? Do you buy bulls?
I haven't bought a bull because I've been taking in embryos, and it's kind of funny because we're running health schemes and all the rest of it. But because nothing's ever come in, I think our antibiotic usage has dropped dramatically. Okay,
that's interesting. So your health status has stayed higher because you've not brought anything into the island.
Nothing coming in since 2018.
Okay, that's interesting. And what about using your own bulls? Have you gone down that route?
Yeah, we're using it. Well, it's the American embryos we're using, and we have loads of ones to use. We haven't actually got round to using them yet. We'll get some of them done this year again. So plenty of choice. I've never had such a choice for stock bulls. So.
Well, they seem like they're doing you well. If the heifers that I saw in Stirling, anything to go by, they look like they're doing you very well, Colin. So you're going the right way.
I've not got any regrets about changing, but I still have to complete the circle, and that'll be in September when I sell the commercial cattle.
Of course, yeah.
But I'm very optimistic at this stage with them.
Brilliant. Well, it's nice to hear an optimistic farmer, should I say. I think we all should be in some sort of way, but certainly you sound like you're a man with a plan, Colin, which is great to hear. It's
no many folk get 2 shots at changing the breed. And usually one change it does most folk, I think.
Sure. No.
Long enough to do one change, but I've started the second one anyhow.
A credit to you just to being a man that looks forward with a bit of pioneering attitude. Colin, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on Top Lines and Tails, and I wish you well with the winter, and hey, we'll catch up with you in Stirling, no doubt.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andy.
Great to speak to you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Top Lines and Tails, the nation's favourite livestock podcast. And as always, we'd like to thank our sponsors and partners, Harborough, for their continued support with the Top Lines and Tails. And don't forget that Harborough are suppliers and manufacturers of high-quality livestock nutrition, including their Rumitech, which was mentioned briefly on this podcast here. So find out how Harborough can help you as we come through the winter and getting towards the springtime. Always different requirements on there. They've got a whole team of advisors advisors there that will help you out. And of course, they've got their store just down the road there. You can pop in there, pick up what else you need for your farming business. So get in touch with Harborough and see how they can help you with your business. You'll find them on the internet if you look there at harborough.co.uk. And don't forget, while you're there on the internet, look out the Top Lines and Tails Facebook page and join our community, where you'll find pictures and various other things to back up this and previous episodes.